All right, here we are. We are Ask Me Astros. This is Vivi Henriette. I am KristaLyn and Sofia. We are two very passionate astrologers that approach charts from a traditional astrological mindset with very different lenses. So we each bring something really unique to a chart interpretation. Every week we do a coffee talk, or if you're like me, hydration talk, to just talk about the astrology, anything that's going on. And once a month, we try really hard to choose an anonymous chart where we will do an hour-long live broadcast like this, but do a reading of the anonymous chart so you can see what it looks like when you're in a consultation with astrologers. And if we choose your chart, you actually get a free consultation with each of us. So feel free to submit your chart and your question about your chart to askmeastros.com if you're interested in that. And today I'm guest talking about some of the weekend transits and maybe even a little bit about this new moon in Gemini.
Yeah. I'm so curious to know your thoughts. So as I was digging into, do you want to show the Luna chart? And I'll start telling my story.
Yeah, I just had to make sure I did all that without going live on my Instagram. So hello to everyone who's now jumping on my Instagram live. I already did the intro. I got really into it. There will be a recording. It was just the intro. You didn't miss anything. So we're showing the chart for yesterday. We've decided to use the location of the chart for Los Angeles. Do you say Los Angeles or do you say Los Angeles? I'm always curious how people.
Los Angeles, but I'm not from here, so I have no. I'm from Detroit.
I think this is. I'm gonna do. I don't want an entire screen. I want a window. Luna's. There we go. Because I have two charts up, so we'll be able to look at both of them without having to do the screen share thing.
Okay, so I'm really curious to know about, and I'll get into my story. I think it's okay. It started Saturday, and this is interesting. I think this is like Venus somehow related, but we'll like.
Okay. I mean, it would make sense.
It feels martial. It feels something. I'm sure. Like I'm trying to unpack this. So,
Yeah,
so Saturday I park my car. This is just a minor intro to the story, and this is very embarrassing. I was like, I did a perfect parallel parking job. I took a picture because I was like, oh, I did a really good job.
Yeah.
Okay. So a couple hours later, my neighbor comes like, is that your red car? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, you hit my car parking. Like, and she's like one of these people that just like has this like camera and just monitors. And like, I was like, oh, I literally had no clue. Like, I just thought like I knocked the curb parking because that's what I do. And like, so anyway, she shows me the footage and it just looks like a car bumping another car, like parking. And anyway, so there's like no damage, whatever. And she's just like, my check engine light's on. And I'm like, okay, like, I don't know. Like, so anyways, it's just this weird martial, like awkwardness with my neighbors involving like cars. Okay. So just set that aside. So the next day, my flatmate like has their car stolen in front of our house, and not our house, like in the neighbors, anyways, in the neighborhood. And so it's such an ordeal. Like we have to go like to, thankfully they had an AirTag so they could see the car. So we have to go to the police station, and then we have to go to the impound lot where the car ended up. But then we have to go back to the police station. But then we have to go back to the impound lot. But then we have to go back to the police station. And so at the end of all of this, on the way to the police station for the third time, I'm texting a friend of mine, and it was about something. And they were like, oh yeah, I'm going to do that tomorrow when the moon's not void of course. And I never think about the void of course moon because I know like the Hellenistic is like 30 degrees or something very sort of rare. But the minute he said that, I was like, my friend, I was like, this is not getting resolved today. And sure enough, like it wasn't. And then on the way home, we got like accosted by this person like in the street, like who like, I mean, thankfully we're okay. They sort of like karate chopped us in front of our faces, like in the air. It was sort of a little jarring, but like there's something happened. Like what are we putting this to, KristaLyn? I haven't even like.
So I'm looking at the chart and I'm thinking about the void of course moon, which you're right. Hellenistically, a void of course moon is a moon that's not going to interact with another planet for a full 30 degrees, as though for a full sign, it doesn't get to talk to anybody. Now, at first I was like, wait, we might have something here, because once this moon gets past Mars at 25, you hit 26 degrees, nothing in Taurus is aspected until conjunction. So that 26 degrees, and if we don't include Uranus as an outer planet, would put you void of course until a conjunction at 28 with Mercury, except because these would not count as aspects because they're averse.
Okay.
But then we would have that 18-degree sextile with Saturn that would count. So it
Yeah.
wasn't quite void, of course, but it was going for quite a long sprint without talking to anybody. So there is that. I wonder if it was the moon being so closely conjunct Mars throughout the course of that day, which for you is your 9th house. That's where your sun is. That's like a lot of stuff. What perfection year are you in? Have you gone into your 6th yet?
I'm in a 6th house perfection year. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
I'm in a,
Saturn's,
I think I'm still in, by monthly perfection, I believe I'm in, 8th house, I think
okay.
still.
I mean, 8th house would be, if there are any legal issues, police station and impound lot. But
I wasn't
I'm
so it's
also,
interesting though, because sorry, going on. I wasn't so like I mean, me personally, it was hitting, yeah, but like there's just I feel like something like aggressive in the air, and that's what I was kind of wondering if it's like that Moon Mars situation
yes,
somehow.
I would say if it's aggression in the air, it's definitely the moon Mars. Throwback to May for me when all the good energy was supposed to be happening in Taurus. And I'm like, why are we not feeling this Taurian energy? And it's because the moon was in Aries with Mars and Mercury, right? So the moon gets the last say of what we get to experience, it seems, because she is that activator. Now, at the same time, she was whole sign sextile to that Venus Hellenistic Cazimi already that we're experiencing. Medieval would have said, put her on 16 degrees either side of the sun, 16-degree minutes, I mean. But she is on the same degree now. So we're kind of experiencing what the Hellenistic astrologers would have considered a Venus Cazimi in Gemini. Gemini being, associated a little bit. I mean, it's more Mercury, but if we think about Jupiter being in detriment in Gemini, there's a lot of big opportunities for confusion and for miscalculations and that kind of stuff. So I think a lot of us are just adjusting to Jupiter being in the sign of his detriment and still being Jupiter. So it's a lot of yes to I didn't think that through kind of stuff.
Okay, that is a whole conversation.
Yeah.
Interesting, and I'll keep you up to date with what goes on with my very anonymous flatmate. But I'm kind of wondering because this situation happened as Venus was like being burnt out by the sun right before the Cazimi moment.
Yeah.
And then it was Cazimi, and I'm kind of like hoping that somehow like things end up better for them post insurance, post all of it, which would be like a very like good Venus Cazimi thing. I'm kind of having that feeling, but I'll keep you up to date. And
Yeah.
just another crazy thing about this, their car was stolen 1 year to the day that their car was stolen last year. The exact
Oh,
day.
that's weird.
And I was like, "What is that?" That feels like more than
Mhm.
astrology. Is that some like numerology? Like what? That
Well, that feels
feels
like whatever lesson you might have learned from last year, you didn't learn. So the cycle repeated exactly the same way instead of in a different archetypal way.
right.
If we're going to stick to the astrological attempted interpretation with that. But yeah, to the day, like astrology was not exactly the same as it is now last year on that day. So
That's what I was like,
that
that's
is
really
unique.
curious. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
yeah.
Something to explore with them if you get to interview them a little bit more and look at their chart
Absolutely.
and see what's going on.
No, absolutely. But did you get any aggression, or was it just I'm so curious if anyone's listening to this, anyone in the chat, if you felt that sort of because I was also thinking, it's the moon where we aren't having an eclipse right now, but it is the place with Mars. It just feels like such a loaded part of the zodiac. So I was curious to know if anyone else felt any sort of like aggro energy this weekend.
Yeah. Yesterday, I basically stayed in the house all day. I have not been able to catch up on sleep since Norwalk. So I've been having these like involuntary 404 shutdown naps almost every day. And so most of yesterday, like I think we only went out. We went out to go to Costco and then we went to grab a coffee at this Japanese tea and pastries place, which was nice. But we stuck to ourselves a lot. We did see that a lot of drivers were driving aggressively,
And I
which
was almost killed on the road.
well, that's
Sorry.
another story you didn't share yet.
Yeah, no, like on the way to the police station for the third time, and
Yeah.
Escalade nearly drove me off the road. I'm telling you, like that's what I was like yesterday. It was so aggro.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry that you had such an experience yesterday. I mean, we can't rule out that the moon was also separating from the North Node. But if you're someone who is exploring Chiron as an important point in the chart, I mean, I don't know what time of day it was for you in LA, but if it was anywhere in the morning or
It was
around like
the whole it
mid-morning,
was literally all
the
day.
whole,
It was a
yeah,
9-hour adventure to the police station 3 times.
cheapers. That would have driven me nuts. You probably
Oh,
held your cool a lot better than I would have. Oh, yeah. So I think that's all I can think about on that one for right now, unless we have more information. But yeah, that moon applying to Mars, separating from the node. What else is she separating from? I mean, before that would have been the sextile with the sun and Venus. So
I think I
interesting.
think we're onto something. I'm curious to
Yeah.
know, this is a good maybe a segue for people who, um, aren't familiar with what a Venus cazimi is or what a
Mhm.
cazimi is, a little bit about this Venus cazimi. Maybe we should, like, touch on that for a moment.
Yeah, yeah. So I just did extra research on this, mostly through Rhetorius, actually.
Cool.
Um, where he spends just about a sentence talking
'Kay.
about a planet being parthily, which is on the same degree as the sun, and that means that the planet is in the heart. So the word
Yeah.
Kazemi wasn't coined until more Persian medieval astrology, and it comes from Kasimi, which is one of their words that translates from Rhetorius, and I believe we remember from Ali Alomi's thing. Rhetorius was the text that they used the most when they were adapting for their astrology. And so they noticed Rhetorius called it being in the heart of the
Yeah.
sun. And so they called that Casimi. And that's where we get Kazemi today. So fun fact for history and linguistics. But what it means, and we can show it really well here, is the planet that is typically a visible planet. We want to be very specific about this. It is a visible planet that is having its exact conjunction with the sun. If any other planet is conjunct with any other planet, it's a conjunction. It's only Kazemi when it's a planet and the sun. And truly, we want to like, if we want to be very specific about it, it would be one of the visible planets where it's Mercury through Saturn.
Yeah.
The outer planets, it's a little bit different. So we have these Kazimis, which is in the heart of the sun. And we were talking about this a little bit last or 2 weeks ago too, where Venus has been kind of falling into the forges of the sun's, um, flames. And so as she did that, all of the not necessary metals and junk and grime has been purged off of her, and now she is in the middle of the sun, where she is, that's that really malleable state of being reforged. Maybe the blade was dull, maybe whatever Venus was focused on, especially now in Gemini, was not as sharp as it could have been, and now there's this beautiful ability to say all of the grime is gone. We're in our pure state. We can reforge into anything and begin a new cycle. And so that Kazemi moment is that pure Venus moment. It's the purest expression of Venus in whatever sign she's in. In this case, that's Gemini. So over the next few days, as we experience this Venus Kazemi, we're going to be seeing if the moon would get over there, it'd be even better, which she will.
Yeah.
We'll see the purest expression of what Venus does in Gemini, which is pretty cool to think about. So definitely worth journaling over the next few days.
Absolutely. And what's coming to mind as you're speaking is, like, I'm just still thinking about how for so many people, right, coming off my I think my moon Mars story, and somehow feels like a callback to these eclipses we just had, the big one being April 8th,
Mhm.
and how jarring that was. Someone recently asked me, like there's been just a lot of just well, I mean, God, like, so much sort of Mars, and just really, like, there's just so much, and someone was like, "What's going on?" And I think these eclipses hold so much, so I just wanna kinda stick
Mhm.
to the personal here, but for people who, like, thinking about those eclipses, right, and thinking about that was the south node of the south node of the moon was in
Mhm.
Libra as part of that story. Like, there's something about this Venus cazimi that feels like not only just like a reset for Venus, but like almost like a movement into a new part of our lives. Because it's interesting that it's Venus rules where the south node is, so it's part of that eclipse story, but then also thinking that this it's Venus and Gemini where Jupiter just ingressed, and it's bringing in this whole other story, which now trines Libra. So it does feel like a really nice marker to think
Mhm.
about everyone's sort of relationship to Venus, and maybe like a moment to acknowledge maybe the newness and maybe
Mhm.
the busyness it's about to descend upon all of us.
Yeah, and you're right in so many ways. If we pull up the new moon chart here,
Yeah.
there's a lot of newness happening. There's the newness of, I think my chart is still in Regiomontanus here. I was doing some magical elections. So I'm going to
Nice.
give you guys a quick tutorial on how to do settings in Luna, if I can remember. I'm going to make
Ooh.
this big. Yeah, so if you want to change your settings in Luna, you just go up to settings, come down
Okay.
here, and it is still in Regiomontanus. So I'm going to go down to whole sign, and we're going to bring it back to the way I like to see it. And then I have to fix my window again. There we go. Can you see that now?
I can. Yep. Mhm.
Okay, great. He made a couple other things wonky, but we can work with it. There we go. So what we're seeing here is the new moon. Whoa, no, we're not. It went away. What we're seeing here, which is still in Regiomontanus. Are you kidding me?
Well, I
Okay, settings is
love
up
that
here if you don't have the full window.
this moon
That
Aries situation is so aggressive, it doesn't wanna leave.
It doesn't wanna leave. No, it
It's
is
like,
whole
"No."
sign.
Mm-mm.
Save settings. There we go. And then you have to make it go away by just coming back to I'm just gonna go back to cycles here and refresh the whole thing, going to June
Okay.
6th. There we go. And now we have our lovely whole sign. Yay. So now we're seeing this amazing setup over here with this new moon in Gemini. So we have a new moon, we have a new Venus,
Yeah.
but also we've got a new Jupiter. Jupiter has not been in Gemini for 12 years, and Jupiter has not been in detriment since the last time Jupiter was in Virgo. So if we count back to Virgo, goodness, that's, 12, 11, 10, 9 years ago was the last time Jupiter was in detriment. So now we're experiencing this whole new, what does Jupiter do when Jupiter doesn't feel received in a sign? And when Mercury is right there feeling amazing, because not only are they in Mercury's sign, but Mercury is just on the edge of their own terms too. So Mercury's got triplicity, terms, sign, chariot, tons going for Mercury in this sense. Plus you've got the moon with the Venus Cazimi happening. So there's a lot of Gemini energy happening this week.
I'm still sitting on that last question, like,
What does
what
Jupiter
does
do?
Jupiter do? And I'm just imagining this for a minute. Like, I think of, like, Gemini is just, like, the house of just facts, of just all the things and
Mhm.
the data, and then it's, like, very excited, but there are all these things that we can sort of pinpoint, and Jupiter is that, which is sort of I don't know, like, I think of sometimes, like, Jupiter is that without there isn't necessarily like, it's this sort of open-ended question, and I just imagine, like, this sort of it just feels like mass confusion or chaos, and I'm trying to
Mhm.
something better on this, but I'm just literally like, help me out here. I know you have a really good I'm just imagining, like, what would Jupiter would eat in Gemini's home? Like,
So
is it just never filled? Like,
do you want the
satiated?
food analogy or do you want the more air analogy that I just came up with in my head?
Okay, let's go with the air analogy first.
Okay,
We'll sit there.
so imagine Jupiter has this radio station that he loves listening to, right? And then
Yeah.
Mercury comes in when Jupiter moves into Gemini, someone puts the radio on seek. So every 3 seconds, the channel changes to the next one it can find, and you don't get to listen to the whole song. But you're like going through all of the songs. You're feeling all of it. You're getting to hear all of it. You're getting to sample everything, but you can't actually settle and just stick to a radio station and a genre of music that you love.
That is so perfect. That's
Thank
so
you.
perfect and so, like, on point and so my worst nightmare. Like, when
Mine
it goes on
too.
seek for a moment, I'm like, "Make it
Anxiety.
stop."
Yeah.
Like, I don't care if I like the song, it's anxiety like,
Yeah.
that's
Well, and
it
like
for
those
sure.
songs that start with a 3-second long note, so you can't tell anything about them, and then it
Yeah.
moves on, and it might have been your new favorite song. We'll never know. Yeah.
And that's perfect because, like, Mercury just wants to be like, "No, no, 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 I wanna collect it all." Like, I'm like the
Mhm.
sort of like the, like, obsessive record collector who has just, like,
Mhm.
rooms full of records, but they don't have a chance to listen to all of it, but somehow they can, like, comprehend it because their brain
It's
works like
an
that.
infinite PBR list.
Oh, yes, and then Jupiter's just like, "I just wanna, like, listen to a song and get really into it and just, like, feel the universe through this sort of,
Mhm.
like, portal
The
moment."
vibration. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not happening.
Nope. No, Jupiter wants to sit and listen to Enya for a while. Um, and Mercury is just like, no, but there's every song out there. Jupiter or Mercury is that friend, and Gemini is the place for this, where you have that friend that's like, oh, I like a little bit of everything, and they mean it.
Mhm. Oh, it's like me, like my Gemini moon. I think I'm just like, I'm getting also, I'm starting to feel myself getting anxiety because I already am surrounded by books. And it's funny, my friend Cameron has a lot of books and she's very proud. She's like, I've read all these books. And I'm like, yeah,
Mm.
well, I've read the first paragraph of all these books.
I get the gist.
I can finish a book sometimes.
I've seen you finish a book. I can vouch for that.
No, I mean, I can, but also I get that Gemini impulse to be just like, but I need to understand a little bit of all of it so I can make sense of the world.
Yeah.
But that also we need Jupiter to like Jupiter in its own home to like remind us that yes, there is a value to sometimes just sitting in the song.
Mhm.
And right now we are not getting that Jupiter.
It's not the year of sitting in songs. It's the year of going to every concert you can think of and finding something new that you like. So maybe next year you get to sit in the song when Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, which will be my Jupiter return, which I'm stoked about. It's going to be good.
It's like fascinating too, because I think a little bit like, okay, so how do we make sense of this year? Because Jupiter's going to really try to Jupiter, right? And I
Mhm.
think the answer is just like exhaustion because Jupiter's going
Yeah.
to be like, okay, okay, I'm going to really try hard to listen to the whole song, but all of them, but I just don't sleep.
Yeah.
Is that?
It's sort of like mental fatigue and burnout. Like I have so much to think about and I'm staring at the screen and I know that I know how to read, but those words are not doing it for me right now. Yeah. Hopefully that's not just a me thing. Yeah.
Unrelated. Maybe we can get back into this new moon. Watch me ADD on you. At NORWAC, Ali Alomi's
Mhm.
Dr. Alomi's like amazing talk on world astrology.
Yeah.
Um, Opening with, we can't just talk about vibes. And I felt so seen and called out because like
Oh,
I
yeah.
just
Well,
wanted
and
to
it's like
give breath to like
there's
be
a time and a it's vibes are like manifesting, right? There's a time and a place where that's accurate, but it's been used so much, it's like I don't even know if that's a word anymore because I've heard it so much it started to sound weird. And I especially adored, we had the conversation a couple weeks ago about the era, and he was
yeah.
talking about how we're not in the age of Aquarius, we're in this epoch of air or this age of air.
Mm,
And as
yeah.
we were talking about the era, because it's funner to say it that way. But he was saying it about that the age of Aquarius is not all about the vibes. And it's not, like he was really, I think, trying to hold astrologers accountable to their integrity. Just saying you're a traditional astrologer and then saying the same thing as a pop astrologer who hasn't done their research um, does not differentiate you from that pop astrologer if that's what your goal is. And so I appreciated that as someone who tries to cite their sources all the time and hopefully shake up their language a little bit. But I can see the value there too. It did make me giggle a little bit. Um, and it makes me think, he asked us at the beginning of the talk, think about what you want to get out of this. And you had asked me, well, what are you looking to get out of it? I'm like, I want a formula for how to attack a world astrology chart or a mundane chart.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, I did feel like I connected more with how to do that, how to take a formula, apply it, and make a meaningful prediction. It also validated a lot of the predictions I did in my own Aries ingress approach this year. So I was really glad to see that there's a lot of things that I'm on the path to doing really correctly or accurately, and that I can get even more comfortable with it.
Absolutely. And the reason I brought this up was not because I'm just like, oh man, I feel called out, which whatever, I feel called out. Just thinking that like when we were doing having these like conversations about like yeah, like Jupiter and sort of this exhaustion, it is true, but also to say that there are methods for going deeper and we're not really doing serious world astrology. I know that's something that you do. And
Mm,
just like thinking about like the different types of astrology and being very clear about it. Like someone was asking me like my thoughts on certain things. And like, I just was like, I actually haven't taken the time to like sit and study to give you a proper response. So I just sort of like,
Mhm.
it's made me more aware of just wanting to like always like state my intention or like what we're doing. Um, I was sat down, I was like, oh, maybe I'll do some like horoscopes for Jupiter and Gemini. This is like occurred to me. I'm not like really big on horoscopes, but I was thinking, man, horoscopes are so hard. Like for all the reasons, but then also just thinking of like recently I've been thinking about sect a lot more lately
Mhm.
and like sect considerations. Like you're writing
Yeah.
about Jupiter and Gemini and like, the same, I don't know, Gemini rising, Jupiter and Gemini, like it's a bad example. Let's say Jupiter in the 10th house, right? Could
Mhm.
just be vastly different depending if you're like born day or night, right? And so anyways, I just thinking about all these things and thinking that's important to like make sure we let people know that this is a level of astrology we're doing, but there are
So
different.
many.
Yes.
Yeah. I spent all of last evening, I got so frustrated. Dan's birthday is coming up. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm going to look at your solar return and see how your year's going to go. And I looked at it and I'm like, this just doesn't seem like it fits
Okay.
last year for him or this year. And I'm like, okay, we had a birth certificate time. His mom insisted it was wrong. So we switched it over a couple years ago. And I was
Stop.
like, Dan, I just really wonder if maybe your original time is correct. Can you think about some times in your life that were really poignant for you? And I'm going to go through we spent hours. I did circumambulations, progressions, zodiacal releasing from fortune and spirit. I did, progressed moon things, progressed conjunctions. I did transits. I did everything I could think of to be like, what timelines would be good for everything here? Like what fits the most? And when it came down to it, I also looked up like where's the ruler of the ascendant if it's Gemini or if it's Leo? Where is that in the chart and what resonates most? Joke's on me. He's got Mercury, Sun, and Jupiter all in the same sign of Gemini. So that kind of like threw it off a little bit. But then finally, it got to the point where it was like, who who's the malefic of sect? Because if you were born in like before sunrise, that
Yeah.
was Saturn. If you were born after, that was Mars. So what like was your Saturn return really challenging? How did you handle Mars retrogrades in which signs and what did that do? And by the end of it, don't tell anybody, but I think his birth certificate was right.
Okay, here's the thing. Like when you give birth, like your body produces drugs so you forget things. And I think also just parents are very like depending on who you are, there's no uniform type of parent. I think parents would be
Mhm.
like, "But I was there." And like, "Okay,
Yep.
yeah, but you were there." But also, like, I
Were there
trust
windows in the room? How tired were you? What kind of drugs did they give you? Yeah.
what kind of drugs did your body give you? You literally
Mhm.
your body produces drugs to, like, forget where you are because 'cause you're giving birth to, like, a human, and that's, like,
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it came out in favor of the 4:10 a.m. Time, which
Oh my god.
led to the Malefica sect being completely different. And I looked at, one of my favorite stories about Dan and me is the Venus talisman. And I was like, okay, does that still work? Because I know it worked in life. So the chart has to support that.
Yeah.
And it did. Yeah, because she was going through his 12th house at the time then. And it was this unseen enemy that just popped out of nowhere and I ended up embodying it because I discovered something. But that's how it worked. So
Wait, I'm thinking about your money tree or your Venus tree. Am I
yeah, my
thinking
Venus,
did I miss
it's our Venus talisman tree.
Yes.
But then when Venus retrograded through my perfected sign last year, and I
Mhm.
saw that, she was also his time lord last year, I was like, hey,
Yeah.
do you still want to be in this partnership? Because we're going to have problems in August
Yeah.
and we should get a therapist. And that's what we did. We got a therapist and we got a bigger pot for the Venus talisman tree. So it had more room to grow symbolically. We replanted it on a Venus election before she went retrograde. So
I love that. I love that
yeah.
story so much, and I think it's like yeah, I mean, astrology can be scary, and but, like, remembering, like, why we do this is so we can, like,
Mhm.
get in front of stuff and actually,
Yeah.
like yeah. Oh, I
Yeah,
love
it's
that story so
if
much.
you've chosen that you want to stay in this relationship, now we have everything we need to make sure that we can turn this into a growth experience rather than a separation experience. And that felt really good.
I love that. I'm gonna check the chat. Okay, here
Yeah.
real quick. Um, oh, I wanna, like, before we
Hey,
move on
Carl.
too, I just wanna say that Carl validated my experience. yesterday of
Oh.
being really crazy Mars.
Mhm.
The homeless person I've been running into and visiting with was walking down the street yelling yesterday, as opposed to down the street singing like the day I met them last week.
Mm. Yeah. That's a more martial energy
Uh-huh.
for sure.
Uh-huh.
Also,
Okay,
hello to
thanks.
everybody. I'm looking this way, which means I'm looking at you guys, I promise. Hi to everybody on Instagram right now. Thanks for joining us. I hope you're enjoying the story. Feel free to comment. I am checking your comments on the Instagram live. I can see
Yeah.
Amber's here, Melissa's here. I know Sarah said good morning earlier. Hello.
Yeah, talk to us. Talk to us.
Mhm.
What's going on? What's everyone
This is
else
a
been
coffee
feeling?
talk or a hydration talk. You can talk
Oh
too.
my god. Yeah, like, do you also feel a little bit like this has been like a running joke? Some friends of mine, like Jupiter and Gemini so far just feels like it threw away everybody's bingo card.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
I literally feel like in the past 2 weeks, like me, but like a lot of people I know are suddenly like, wow, didn't see that coming. Didn't nope, no clue. Like
Jupiter in Gemini has been I was like, Jupiter's coming up to my lot of fortune. And I know it's in the eighth house, but we'll see what good can happen here, even though Jupiter's not technically my benefic. And literally, I flew home from Norwalk a day early, partially because I was like, I'm not going to fly on Labor Day because everybody's going to be flying on Labor Day. No delays for me, right? And literally, it was beautiful. No delays all day. I had the best flights. They felt efficient. I didn't feel like any of them were drawn out. I even slept on one. I got upgraded on another one. I'm like, this is Jupiter coming through. Phenomenal. We go into land at Richmond half an hour early. Dan has strawberry shortcake waiting for me, and I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to it for 24 hours. I told you about it outside Target at Norwalk that I was getting shortcake the next day, right? Like,
love
I'm
you.
stoked. And we go into landing, and I'm like, oh, here we go. And all of a sudden, the whole plane goes, and I'm like, oh no. Oh, like there had been turbulence all day, but Jupiter is in an air sign now. Big guy coming into a space that's shaking things up. I get that. Um, so let's, we'll fly around, we'll go down again. And I also start tuning into my intuition at this point, right? Because it's like I'm in the air, I don't have Wi-Fi. What's going on? And so we come into landing again and we go up again. And then the turbulence is so bad, we do one of those drops. We do that 3 times in a row. And I'm just like,
Stop.
this is not a roller coaster. So I buy Wi-Fi so that I can text Dan and just be like, hey, it's actually kind of scary up here. Like, this is some crazy turbulence. I'm looking out and I see emerging from the clouds, they're starting to form thunderheads. And I'm thinking, like, I know what's going to happen. They're going to say we don't have enough gas. They're going to divert us to Dulles. And who knows what's going to happen after that. But once again, on my flight home, I'm going to end up in Dulles because that's just how things go. And sure enough, the next thing I know, they're announcing we're running out of gas. We can't land. We're diverting to Dulles. My 45-minute flight took 3 hours to get me home. And I was so mad. I still had the cheesecake, but I was mad. It wasn't cheesecake, it was shortcake.
I
Yeah.
think the only time to date I've ever been on a plane that was diverted somewhere else was with you, and it was like a hour-long, multi-hour fiasco. Like,
And we ended up in
KristaLyn, what is it
Dulles.
with you and air travel? What do we think
Huh?
is happening in your chart with you and air travel?
I I'm not sure. I brought this up with Larry. I was like, listen, Mercury is my time lord this year of Virgo in the 11th with my MC, activating, sure, like, there will draw in themes of the eighth house of the lot of fortune, all that. But Mercury is at this weird declination faucus in their own terms
Mhm.
of Taurus. And they're retrograde. But Larry was like, well, you do spiritual work, that's for sure. But I also wonder if it also delays my travel or like just puts a lot of obstacles in my way when I travel. Um, Potentially. I also have Saturn in their own terms in domicile in the third. Jupiter's exalted in the ninth. I don't know why we can't have Jupiter take over on that, but Saturn's tugging
Jupiter,
on
take
him
the
there.
wheel.
Yeah, right? Please. So I'm gonna do more like devotional work for travel from now on to like pull in more
Yeah.
Jupiterian ninth house exaltation kind of energy so that I can try to lean into that Jupiter in the ninth a little bit. We'll see when I fly out to Denver next week.
To hang out with me and many other
Yes.
people.
And all of Larry's other students and Larry and Demetra. And yeah, it's gonna be
I
great.
know. Oh my god. Okay, so sticking to this how ooh, the Mortal and Wild says the common denominator here is repeating patterns. Where's Athena at the moment? Good
As
question.
in the asteroid Pallas Athena?
I think so.
Or
I'm thinking.
yeah, because
Or is there a different Athena?
Pallas is on my sun and descendant in my chart, so near to Mercury. I don't know what she's doing in transit. I don't follow the asteroids transiting.
This just like again, that's a thing.
You put your finger up and you've frozen with it there. So I'm sorry, I mimicked you.
This was not in the bingo. Are you still
There you
there?
go. I'm here. How are you?
That was wild. Okay, we're like, oh, technology, and it just like black
This was
screen.
not in the bingo card. I loved it.
Not in the bingo card. Hello. I feel like I talked to a lot of people. I've been traveling, so this is all sort of like anecdotal, but I've noticed a lot of people since Jupiter has ingress
Mm,
in their sign. Like I'll just be busy, but I feel like there's been a lot of like depression creeping up on people, like overwhelm and
mm,
depression. And I was thinking how like Jupiter rules Pisces, where Saturn is, and Jupiter's coming in for that square, and just thinking about maybe like talking through that for some people who are suddenly feeling again like overwhelmed and depressed because I've
mhm.
encountered a lot of people like that, especially maybe if Jupiter's angular in their chart, I've noticed.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an excellent point to bring up is the Jupiter Saturn square, which is going to be approaching. I think it actually comes up in August. Like Jupiter is
Yeah.
not slow right now.
Mm. Yeah, like, what are your thoughts, though, on the square? And can you like, if I say that when I,
Yeah.
say like, speak to that sort of that, like, kind of darker part of, like, debilitated Jupiter kind of bringing depression up for some people? Like,
Yeah.
how are you making sense of that in the chart?
So we have Saturn who has no essential dignity in Pisces. I'd have to bring up AstroSeek to figure out exactly which terms of Pisces Saturn rules. Typically, it's closer to the end, so Saturn might be getting near to terms. But Jupiter is in detriment. So Jupiter has no buddies right now in Gemini, and
Yeah.
the person that is closest to Jupiter is the one who is not going to pay attention to Jupiter's complaining.
Yeah.
So, you have that going on emotionally, but if we even think about in cycles, this is the first real interaction these two have had since the conjunction in Aquarius, which was a great conjunction, a switch in triplicity that
Mhm.
is here to stay, that brought in our era, introducing Aquarius as a theme. And so I think, it's not surprising this year that there have been so many shifts in leadership across the world.
Yeah.
Mexico got a female president over the weekend. A
Yep.
lot of places are holding a lot of elections this year, not just the US. But for those that do have eyes on the US, it certainly is not escaping my attention that we are in this time of like either we're shifting our dynamic or we're staying the same, and some people can't handle either one. There are people who are really struggling to stay the same, and there are some people who are really struggling to change it.
Yeah. Yeah, coming back to the change, maybe, and that's kind of I'm bringing it back to the personal too. Just thinking about the like those big shifts, right, that we see happening in the sky in the world, but like how people kind of internalize them. Because I think sometimes
Mhm,
too, it's like also um this is I would love to know a therapist or someone who could kind of dive deeper into this, but it feels
mhm.
like maybe people have different responses to change and overwhelm, and some people, when things feel like it's a lot, they tend to be on the more like depressed side, or like just kind of like holding space for that for
Mhm.
people, that for a lot of people this can be we're talking about it as sort of like it's funny, and it is, but it can also be really challenging for some people right now.
Well, yeah, especially, thinking about it within cycles, the average person has a certain amount of power, but they are subject to other people's choices as well.
Yeah.
And so that sense of powerlessness that you have with this Saturn Jupiter square that's coming up, of other people's decisions deciding for you, there is a lot of anxiety and depression that goes along with that. Why does my voice even matter? Or how do I find a way to be active
Mhm.
within my capacity, within my power? It's something I've been struggling with lately of like, how can I be the most influential, and where is my place that I can take the most action and make the biggest difference? You can find those places. Mine is coming up, I hope soon. There's an opportunity that popped up and I was like, this is what activism looks like for me. And I'm excited about it. I can't talk about it yet because it's not official and I don't want to like put stuff out there that's not real yet.
Yeah.
Um, but if it is, I'm excited because it will give me something to do with my hands instead of twiddling my thumbs, waiting for other people to make my choices for me.
Yeah.
So I think there's a big feeling of how small are you stuck feeling in these bigger cycles, and how can you do everything you can to take away from that Saturn and lean into the Jupiter and make yourself feel as big as possible, make yourself feel as influential as possible with the means that you have around you in your sphere of influence.
Absolutely. And, curious, kind of, I know I can keep digging into this, but thinking about also people who maybe are just, I'm just thinking about holding two of these parts like together, right? I think Saturn and Pisces, like just Saturn, depending, again, thinking about personal lives, which are so varied and so different. And there's a certain amount of like a container for grief that I think about as Saturn and
Mhm.
Pisces
Yeah.
holding, right? There's a certain amount of just like that. And then I think that like Jupiter and Gemini can just feel like almost this sort of like, I'm trying to hold this space here for grief. And Jupiter and Gemini is this sort of like irritating it with all these thoughts and the multiplicity and things like just like keep coming at you. And you can't quite like, maybe that's a little bit of the square. Like I'm trying to just hold space for this grief. And um Jupiter and Gemini is like, but no, we have 1,000 things to do. And so
Mhm.
just thinking about like, so for people that maybe feel even at the point where they just feel like numb or like I don't know how to like move through this, even to feel empowered.
Mhm.
It just sort of, I guess, mm, giving space to that. Like I mean, that would be something that would people would be benefited from a reading, but just like, yeah.
Mhm. Well,
I hope I made
especially,
sense at all.
yeah, if you're looking at someone's individual chart, and anybody who's listening right now that's like, "Oh no, the Jupiter Saturn
Sure.
square is coming up. What do I do? What does that mean?" Just look at where Pisces and where Gemini are in your chart. Maybe take a look at how your relationship with Jupiter and Saturn are natally. Like for me, when they're interacting with each other, it feels kind of familiar because I was born during a Jupiter Saturn opposition. So I'm used to Jupiter and Saturn talking to each other. But when they're talking in square, it's a different kind of conversation. And so you want
Mhm.
to look at where's Gemini, which by the way
Mhm.
is this one right here with the two Roman numeral two kind of thing. And Pisces is this guy right here. It's two fish, doesn't look like it in the symbol, but you can kind of see it. Um, where are they in your chart? What areas of life might that be showing up for you in? You can Google house keywords, and they're usually pretty
Yeah.
helpful. And then just ask yourself, like, how are those themes actually prominent in my life right now? And how does that at least give me peace of mind to know that whatever's going on, there is meaning behind it. There is something that validates my experience and my feelings. So it's okay for me to actually process my feelings instead of glazing over them. This is a time where I highly would recommend, when we were jumping on the call, I was taking notes. My notes
Yeah.
were for my therapist, things that I need to process with someone else to unravel what's going on in my head. If you have some access to something like that, a friend, a therapist, a resource, I would recommend that right now if you're feeling the pressure of perhaps this transit, but just life.
Oh, yeah. As you're saying that, what's coming up for me too, not even just thinking about the like moment of the square itself, but I think we're already feeling this energy. And so one
Mhm.
way to access that Pisces part of the chart might be to lean into that Gemini. Like I'm just thinking
Mhm.
about how for some people, myself included, things like writing dumps are really
Yeah,
helpful, right? It's a sort of
yeah.
form of morning pages, but it's just like sitting down and writing for 15 minutes or maybe having some practice where you can literally dump all of the
Mhm.
sort of nervous thoughts and kind of get rid of those so you can create space for yourself.
Yeah, or even just, recording things with a voice recorder. Some people don't
Mm,
like writing because for
yeah,
for reasons. A
sure.
voice recorder, a Pinterest board. is really helpful. Find images that express what you're feeling, put it in a board, show it to somebody, and then you can explain it from there. All of those things.
I love that we're talking this out, and this feels very like a great like remediation for all this Gemini energy, period, right?
Mhm.
Just like literally like get it out, like get it out in collage, get it out in recordings, writings, just like dump it out.
Yeah, well, and Austin made the beautiful point in the Ficino workshop at Norwalk. The remediation for Saturn you would think is the sun because, Saturn ruling Aquarius, Sun ruling Leo, they're natural opposites. So you would
Yeah.
cancel one out with the other. But if Saturn is frostbite, the sun is heat stroke, right? So you can't just boil something and take the freeze away. He actually
Yeah.
recommended a salve of Jupiter to sort of be
Mm.
that transition from the depression of Saturn to the joy and the liveliness of the sun. St. John's wort is a very solar herb that is often used as a depression or seasonal depression kind of remedy. And it is helpful to a certain degree. I've used it myself. But also if you're thinking, I just can't even fathom myself getting to that point yet, give yourself the baby step of Jupiter.
Ooh, I love that. Okay, can I just ask you a really technical, nerdy question to work something out? Because this always trips me up. Okay, this is really funny. Okay, so because I don't know why, like I'm just being very vulnerable and showing my technical skills here. Technically, okay, if I'm gonna do this, if we put Saturn, because Saturn comes later, so if you put Saturn, send it, Jupiter is in the overcoming square in this position, right? The Jupiter,
So Jupiter is actually closer to the ascendant here. So if you imagine this is the ascendant, who's
yeah.
got this guy?
So Saturn's
Saturn's
in the over.
overcoming. Yeah.
Oh, but even in this, just regardless, just like
Jupiter is applying to Saturn, but Saturn is
yeah,
overcoming Jupiter. So because Jupiter is faster, even though Jupiter looks like, Jupiter's ahead in signs, Jupiter is
sure.
moving faster than Saturn. So Jupiter will get from 2 to 18 faster than Saturn will move. And, we have to hold retrogrades into account too, because Saturn's going to get ready to station in like a month or so. But that's application. What we're looking at for overcoming is who has the upper hand in this aspect that's going
Yeah.
on. So while Jupiter is saying all the stuff between me and Saturn is still to come, it's in the future, Saturn has the upper hand in what's being done.
No, but I'm saying like for the Jupiter, like this, are you talking about this particular chart? Because in this particular chart, Saturn is in the overcoming, but I'm talking about the actual square. Like if we're not looking at houses, does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. But
That's the
Saturn's
same.
still going to be to the right of Jupiter. So even when they're at 18 and 18, let's say, Jupiter would still
Yeah.
be here and Saturn would still be at that angle, which would still put Saturn as overcoming.
Got it. Okay, cool. That like,
Jupiter would be overcoming if it were opposite. If Saturn were in Pisces and Jupiter were in Sagittarius, Jupiter would have the upper hand over Saturn. Because if Saturn were on the ascendant, if we tipped this and we made Saturn here, then Jupiter would have the top part of the chart. He would take the sky.
oh,
Yeah.
got it. But if, okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. But
Yeah.
and same thing too, if Jupiter was in Virgo, then
If Jupiter were in Virgo, yeah, you'd have to go very specific by degree at that point because they're
yeah.
opposite. So if Jupiter were, in the point of Virgo where Saturn was
Oh,
above the descendant when Jupiter's on the ascendant, Saturn's still overcoming. If Saturn is below the descendant when Jupiter's on the ascendant, then Saturn is receiving or inferior. So Jupiter would be
okay.
overcoming.
I know that. I'm just getting confused. Okay.
Yeah.
My question is leading to this. So then, okay, so Saturn's in the overcoming.
Mhm.
I still don't understand, again, show my vulnerability here. What the like hurling rays, what do they do? What are they good for? Because
Yeah.
then
So
if Saturn's the overcoming, wouldn't Jupiter be like hurling some rays backwards? And then what do we do with those rays?
they're not described in ways that have clicked for me yet when I read this. I've read it in Brennan's book, I've read it in Demetra's, and I know that I to me it's like almost a both and, but I'm in a
Yeah.
position too of I'm not entirely certain. To me, if Saturn is overcoming Jupiter, then Jupiter is hurling a ray back to Saturn. It's just
Yeah.
if Saturn's overcoming, it's Jupiter fighting back a little bit, like trying to resist. That's the way I understand it currently, but I am open to correction.
Okay. I think you're right. It's funny. We're doing an example. I'm in a class with Larry, and
Mhm.
it was similar chart, but maybe it's because maybe it's helpful because Jupiter rules Pisces, so it's a little like knock on the door or something like, "Hi,
Yeah.
you're still in my home even though you're trying to like attack me."
Mhm.
It's just it's such a funny like little piece that I'm still trying to be like, how do you make sense of this
Well,
in
yeah,
readings?
and, like, in these last 5 minutes, if we dive into this by dignity and everything, Saturn is in Pisces. Jupiter is approaching this side eye, the square with Saturn. They're gonna
Yeah,
look at each other, they're gonna have a conversation. It's a conflicting one. It's the "we need to talk" kind of conversation, right?
yeah,
So, Saturn has said to Jupiter, "We need to talk." Jupiter is approaching this and not feeling very supported and not has no friends to be like, "Guys, what do I do?" Because Jupiter is in detriment, right? But Saturn is still relying on Jupiter's good graces to get by
uh-huh,
in Pisces. So Saturn, perhaps if we were to take this into a conversation the way we understand it in the modern day,
yeah,
hopefully doesn't want to get Jupiter too ticked off because Jupiter is still paying Saturn's bill.
yes, and
And
okay,
so
okay,
you don't want Jupiter to be hurling the ray to the point where he's like, well, you're cut off.
yeah,
Or
like,
if, in that situation, it's we need to have a compromise here because it's not working rather than I hate you, go away.
oh, I love this. I love this.
Mhm.
Thank you for everyone who's listening who just literally just, like, got caught in the weeds of me, like, staring at this chart with KristaLyn. This is what it's all about. And you know what? If no one else is asking the questions, I am going to ask the question.
I loved it. That was fun.
Oh, where are we on time? Wow. Oh, good. This is perfect.
This is
What's new?
perfect. Sorry, I was just noticing how
Yeah,
Neptune, man, is just gonna be flirting with the cusp of Pisces for the next year. I didn't realize how close we were to that.
I know. I'm so fascinated. It soon we'll get to your thoughts on the, Neptune into Aries Sun
Yeah,
conjunction.
Saturn situation. Yeah, I have thoughts. I'm watching it unfold in front of my eyes. I made predictions about this, especially for the astrological world, and I'm watching it happen. Um,
Um,
so I'm hoping we do well with it.
not publicly, but can we talk about your thoughts about it on my son? I'm like, this is
Yeah.
one of those things where I'm like, "Hmm, trying not to be terrified, but it could also be good," I think.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Saturn on my son was the best of times and the worst of times. I was having surgery. So, but it did improve my quality and length of life by a lot once I came through it. So, yeah, I have thoughts on it because you brought it up like a couple months ago, and I've been thinking about it since then. So I'd be happy to share them with you.
Perfect. Yeah, we should talk about them publicly because even though my son
Mhm.
is at 0 degrees Aries, but lots of other people have placements there, and
Yeah.
I know other people who have the sun too, so we could actually benefit from a larger conversation in the future.
Yeah. If
Um,
you're watching this replay, and you have Aries placements and you're thinking about that Saturn Neptune conjunction coming up towards you, let us know. And that'll help encourage us to know that this conversation will be as valuable as we think it might.
Absolutely, and with that, we are Ask Me Astros. We have a
Yeah.
website, askmeastros.com. I am Vivi Henriette. This is KristaLyn. You can
Mhm.
submit a question to us at any time. Once a month, we have a special episode dedicated to someone's question. We read the chart anonymously. If we choose your question, you get a free reading from both of us. It's really quite wonderful. So submit your questions to askmeastros.com. But we're here every Monday asking questions of each other, listening
Mhm.
to your questions, having coffee, having conversation. What else? What else, Crystalline? Anything coming up for you?
Um, I've got a couple things coming up that are going to be announced over the next week/month. So definitely
Okay.
keep an eye on my social media for that or sign up for my mailing list and you'll get notified of those things. I do bi-weekly mailing lists about the new moons and the full moons, and little announcements end up in there. So I have
Fantastic. Good
corgi
stuff.
hair all over my face because they are shedding like crazy. So
And I'm Art of the Zodiac on Substack. Follow me there. I have interviews and all sorts of writtens.
Mhm.
With that, I think this is officially goodbye. Although I'm going to
Yeah.
ask you to stay on the stream just for a moment longer after we officially goodbye to everyone.
Okay. I'm running up to time, but we can do that.
Okay.
Okay. Bye
Bye.
everybody.
End stream. End